This is a video of how to change brake pads and rotors on a 2011 and up Dodge Durango. This is a Citadel version with the 20-inch wheels. Not sure if it's different for any other ones, but this is what we got. First thing, jack up the car. Obviously put some blocks in front, in the back, maybe something better would be better. Anyways, that's what I got. Use an impact wrench or just a manual wrench provided to remove the lug nuts for the wheel. Like so. After you remove the wheel, by the way, you may have to kick the wheel a few times. Mine was stuck on there, wouldn't come off. Okay, I'm not a professional mechanic, so do this at your own risk. We're trying to get to these. There's two bolts, this guy and another one right on top of it, right here where my finger is. Can't get the camera to see it. I'm using a 3/4 inch socket, nothing special, just get them undone. Okay, now that the caliper is off, you may need to use a hammer if you have it, if your rotors are as rusty as mine are, and tap the caliper off. I'm using a little paint can to make sure not to stretch this hose. Okay, so next step, I am replacing the rotors because mine are garbage. There is a little seal. It's located over here, little rubber seal. You have to remove it first, and then you'll be able to knock the drum off, or the rotor, that is. I use some PB Blaster to loosen it. I'm going to use a hammer, tap around to get the rotor loose. Make sure you release the e-brake in order for the rotor to come off, otherwise it's not going to come off. Okay, now that the rotor is off, good time to inspect your e-brake pads. That these guys, if they're worn, mine look pretty much new. This is the old rotor, horrible condition. I'm replacing it with these I got from Napa. Supposedly they're top of the line brand. We'll see. Very simple. Slide the rotor in place, reinstall the rubber seal that we took off earlier. The next step is to compress the piston here. Okay, you could use any method you like. I have this gadget I got from eBay for about 60 or 70 bucks. I use it for all my cars. Pretty much fits inside, and then you just pump it like so. One thing to keep in mind is the reservoir is going to start filling up, so you should always watch not to overfill. The brake fluid reservoir is over here. Loosen the cap. At the moment it's still okay, but you don't want it to spill because it'll make a mess. So just watch out as you're compressing the piston that you take that into consideration. Just take a peek here once in a while. After you've done that, the next step is to remove the brake pads. The first one, if you tap it with the hammer, comes out easy. The other one just simply slides out like so. Fairly simple. Once you remove the pads, you may want to replace this bracket here. I'm using Thermoquiet from Advanced Auto Parts. Comes with pads and a new bracket. I am going to replace it. Some people don't, some people do. I do just because I have it. Alright, once the bracket is on, the next step is to just simply slide it on. If you did everything right, it should simply just slide on. If it's not sliding on, most likely you didn't compress the piston enough, and just redo that and reinstall the bolts in the back. That's these big guys. Make sure you get them tight. Once all the bolts are nice and tight, check to make sure you have your seal. Everything is nice and tight. Make sure when you reinstall the caliper you do not twist this hose. It should be very straight. There is actually a line to help you just in case. Reinstall the wheel and lower the car. And there you have it. Nice new rotors with new pads. Look great. We'll see how they perform. Now it's onto the front. Actually repeat the same thing for the other side, and I'll show you how to do the front. For the front, make sure you do engage the e-brake. It actually helps the car stay in place. Pretty simple. Here's the old rotor. Hopefully we'll have a new one pretty soon. Jack up the car, loosen the bolts, remove the wheel. I use an impact wrench to remove the bolts. You could use the wrench provided with roadside assistance bag or whatever. Just remove them. Now that you have the wheel off, I turned the wheel to the right, steering wheel that is, so I could get to these two bolts to remove them. This one and this guy right here. I'm gonna use the impact wrench just because they're bigger and I don't have a small socket for it. After taking out those two bolts, I pulled the ABS hose out of the clamp so I could pull the caliper off and set it onto my makeshift little table. And most likely I'll need to use a hammer for this as well, just because of this rust portion here, and it kind of holds the caliper with the pads in place. Just like the rears, I'm gonna use some PB Blaster and a small little pick like that to remove the little rubber seal here. Make sure you don't rip it. After the seal is off, use a hammer and just knock it off from where it's sitting. It may be seized up. Just use a little more penetrating fluid and just hit it a few more times. You're replacing it anyways. Make sure you don't damage the nuts or the center bolt. Voila! So once you've done that, now it's time to install your new rotor. I'm installing the same reactive ones I got from Napa, just because they were the most expensive one. They said it's the best. I don't know. We're gonna try them out and see what happens. After I installed the rotor, I put the little rubber seal back, and now onto the caliper itself. We're gonna remove, well, obviously first compress the two pistons, watching for not to spill any fluid. Then we're gonna remove the pads, and they're pretty much the same way as we did in the back. The top one, this guy will pull out. This guy needs a little tap or two, and then I am going to replace this metal bracket here. And I use a screwdriver, pretty much just lift it from here, lift it a little bit, and then pry it that way, and then do the same thing. As I expected, while compressing the last last wheel, it started to come out a little bit from here, so I used a straw. You could use a little syringe or what have you. Just put it in, cover your finger, take it out, and just get a small enough straw and it'll actually work fairly well. Alright, there we go. The pads are out, the little clip is off. There they are. They weren't terrible. Actually, one of them was pretty bad. This line means it's horrible. And this is original Dodge brakes, 40,000 miles on him. Kind of disappointed. I'm installing a new set of, again, same thing as I put in the back, Thermoquiet by Wagner's, and I am going to install a new clip. Just an FYI, to install this clip, you set it on top onto these two. You set it onto this and onto that here. You put it on, and then you use your hand to push down in the middle, and once you get it low enough, these will actually slide in. You push down and that way, and it'll come set right in. So the step following this, we take the caliper, pretty much, if we did everything right, slide it on right onto here. Use the bolts we removed before with an impact wrench, reinstall them here, and we're pretty much almost home free. Once you have it on there, bolts nice and snug. Don't forget this ABS tube that we removed from the clip. Put it right back in, like so. Clean up the mess. This is, believe it or not, out of my rotors. And reinstall the wheel. Make sure you tighten everything very tight. Once you have the wheel on, repeat that for the other side. If you finish the other side like I am, make sure the cap is tight. Make sure all the wheels are tight. And go for a test drive. Keep in mind that although the brakes, everything is new, supposed to work well, because of all the compressing we did, you may need to bleed the brakes. So take it easy coming out. You may have to pump it once or twice the first time. So once the test drive is done, I'll let you know how we did. We're back. The brakes were terrible at first. Obviously this gummy silvery garbage has to wear off, this rust protection. Once everything breaks in, you gotta do some acceleration, hard stops and things like that. Just I guess whatever rotors you get is different for every single one. It looks like everything is working. You do smell a little smell. So far so good. They look great. You could use this procedure to change it to OEM or anything else for that matter. The procedure to do so is the same. Just make sure that all the lug nuts are tight in a little bit. And this is for a 2011 Dodge Durango, but it'll work for other years as well. Actually, for any car for that matter. Procedure is fairly close.